I mean, so I live almost in Ann Arbor, so it's like a 15-minute drive. So like everyone around me, most people are Michigan fans. So like everyone was excited to see me get like my hometown offer. And I was excited too. I've been talking to him for a long time. I have a pretty good connection with them. I've been waiting on it for a while, so I was really excited.
All right. Guess that's not coming. Hey, welcome in Afternoon Live. It is Dennis Fithian and Jim Scarcelli. We're ready to go here. That right there was Cole Cabana. He is four-star running back. Well, that music's playing in the background there, Scar. 1 second. There it is. It wasn't coming in very good for me. It was Cole Cabana, four-star running back, right in my neck of the woods here. Dexter, Michigan. Scar, how are you?
I'm good. Life is good. The Wolverines coming off a win on the hard floor, and recruiting is good. And yeah, this kid's a good player, man. I seen some film of him.
Yeah, let's. I told you what we're going to talk about. You can see it in the description. If you're looking on YouTube, but just a little while ago, the Michigan football Twitter account sent out a picture of a Michigan football helmet, and they said, "Go Blue, something or nothing." What do you think, Jim?
Wow, that's the marketing ploy. That's the message they're sending out. Something or nothing.
No. That's what I'm asking you. I mean, they could have just been saying randomly here on a Thursday, "Go Blue, let's go." You can say "Go Blue" anytime, but also there's a lot of people, as which we're going to talk about here coming up, that are on pins and needles when it comes down to Jim Harbaugh. So maybe they're just playing the game, maybe they're just having fun, maybe they didn't think about that at all. Maybe there is something behind it. So I don't know. It's a total guess, just like Jim Harbaugh and what he's going to do. It's a lot of guessing there. So maybe everybody's just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been dragging on for a while, and but I just think the hiring of Mike Elston is big, and because I don't think a coach is going to be coming in for a guy who's leaving. I just think it's I think they're coming real close to making the announcement. I think Ward and the agents and the NIL and all this stuff. I think there's a lot of things going on that I wish we were privy to, but we're not. And the discussions are going on, and I think they're all heading in a positive direction. I think Michigan is going to have their coach. I think we're going to have assistant coaches, more money for assistant coaches, so we can continue to bring in the best assistants. And I think we're going to have a NIL package, and that whole thing will be solid, and we'll be able to compete against anybody in the country. So that's what I believe is happening behind the scenes. I think we're going to hear some good news pretty soon. You remember, you heard that here first, Big D, from Big Scar.
I got you down. Everybody's listening to you here at 104 on Thursday, the 20th. Well, you mentioned Mike Elston. He played at Michigan. He was a lineman. He was done in 96, and then he stayed around in 97 as a student assistant, and then he was in 98 an intern, and then in 99 he was a GA. So he really paid the price there as being on the staff, and then he went to EMU for a couple of years before he linked up a few years later with Brian Kelly at Central. Followed him down to Central, then to South Bend, and now he's back to Ann Arbor. So he's catching on there at BK was a nice career move for Coach Elston.
I remember him as a player. We played the same position. He was a big outside linebacker, had a good career, played on some good teams. He got to play for Coach Mo and for Coach Carr, so he got to see different styles there. But he was a good player. And then he got into coaching, but he had different jobs. He was at Michigan 4 years as because you could only be a grad assistant, I think 2 years at that time. It still may only be 2 or 3, but they had different roles for him. He was in video, he was in different areas. So both Mo and Lloyd must have liked him. They saw he wanted to be, they wanted him a part of it, learn to be a coach. But the guy developed and did 4 good years at Michigan, went to Eastern, like you said. I remember dealing with him at the camp, at the Michigan camp for many years. And he was like a gopher, you know. But that's what GAs do, man. And I remember him working with Lloyd and Brady when those guys were running the camp. And Elston was like, "Go get this, Mike. Go get that." He was, you know, he was a gopher. But that's how you start out in coaching, man. You know, you got to pay your dues. And then he went to yeah, you're right. He got hooked up with Kelly, Central Michigan, went with them to Cincinnati, and they always won. Went to Notre Dame and won. So he's Mike is a really personable guy. I just talked to a buddy of mine who met him at the high school clinic up in Lansing this past weekend, and they said Mike Elston was outstanding, talking to everybody, friendly as hell. He'll be able to recruit. You know, it's a different approach than Nua. You know, Elston will appeal to some kids maybe differently than Nua, but it's not hard selling Michigan, man. But Elston will definitely have a huge, he's been he was always a big recruiting guy for Kelly. Like he was like the recruiting coordinator / D-line coach or whatever it was. But I know recruiting was always a big part of his heading everywhere he's been. But,
it would be like, you say selling Michigan's easy. It's one of these things where, if he goes down to Texas, which I think he did, there's a recruit that vaulted Michigan into their top 5, a defensive end. And what happened last year with Hutchinson and Ajabo, I would be calling all the top defensive ends and outside linebackers as well and say, hey, you want to come and we got a spot here, you want to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But Elston walks in the room and anybody says, well, what's up with Michigan? It's pretty easy for him to start talking about Michigan when you play at Michigan. And, and anybody that, whenever you graduate there, as soon as, it was 96, well, 95 and 96 were 2 of the greatest Michigan wins against Ohio State. We know how everybody, what enthusiasm and energy it brought this year for a win. 95 and 96, Michigan had 4 losses in those years, but, it's remembered for, Biaka Batuka, 313 yards, and then going down the next year in 96 and, Ty Streets, taking one, Sean Springs slipped, and, Michigan held the Buckeyes, number 1 team, I think, in the country, to single digits. So, you always have that. Pretty easy for Elston to go in and, start talking about Michigan.
Yeah. Danny, I'm putting myself back as that high school kid getting recruited. And look, there's 100 things you're going to evaluate as a recruit looking at a different school. But I do know I got recruited by some guys. I remember the guy at Michigan State. He played there, and he was the guy that was recruiting me. And those things matter. It matters. It's a small deal, but Mike Elston will be able to sit in that living room and say, look, I know about Michigan. I know how it's a lifelong commitment. And it's, he can sell it because he's lived it, and it matters, man. And, the question I want to know, and I don't even know the answer to this, I think does Mike McDonald coach the outside guys, Denny? I don't know the answer to that question. Ajabo, Hutchinson, the outside linebackers, and did Sean Nua just coach the 2 inside guys? I don't know if Mike Elston's going to have all 4, but I thought I had heard McDonald say that he was working with the outside guys. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that, but because I know Mike Elston played outside linebacker, and he's coached primarily the D-line everywhere he's been. I think he's got I think he had coached inside linebackers in the past too. But I want great technique like we did this year. That's what I want from our D-line, because we talked about it every darn game that it always started with the inside 2 guys, Hinton and Mozzie Smith. So what I want from this guy more than anything is that they continue to coach great technique for our inside down big fellas on defense. That's what I want more than anything.
Yeah, it's a good point. George Hilo is the linebacker coach. Maybe he just coaches the inside guys, and the outside guys, are a separate entity, or somebody picks up that responsibility. And they could also split that up now. If Elston's like, if that was his forte, and they could mix those assignments up. That's a pretty good question. Next time it comes around for Harbaugh, or if Elston makes himself available, to ask that particular question, just how those responsibilities are divvied up. Good one, Scar.
Because they're, and I know as a coach in practice, the things that the 2 inside guys are doing in practice are going to be a lot different than the outside guys. The outside guys are going to have some pass drop responsibilities, coverage, technique, things that these guys aren't going to do in practice. So I'm pretty sure it's McDonald that worked with Hutchins. I don't know, but yeah, I'd like to find out the answer to that question. I'm happy with the decision. I think he'll be able to recruit really good, and I think I'm watching Notre Dame's D line. They've always played with great effort, great technique. So I think we hit a home run there. Another Michigan guy on the staff. All that stuff helps recruiting. When a kid comes to Michigan on a recruiting visit, man, he's gonna get hit in the face with former players everywhere. And they're all going to have, every one of them will have a Big Ten championship ring on their finger. Every single one of them.
Well, you think about prior to last year, there was no, besides Harbaugh, there was no Michigan man on the staff. Now, the staff is littered with one. As you're talking about Hutchinson and Ajabo, it's pretty interesting because, you do this with new hires. You're like, oh, well, look at some of, Pruitt. There's been some defensive linemen that have gone through Notre Dame. And you say, oh, well, Elston had this guy. You think about draft picks and, or how they fared in the NFL, that comes back on your position coach, goes all the way up to the head coach as well. But, who gets credit this year is Sean Nua saying, yeah, I mean, I'm sure coming in at USC and they're like, yeah, I mean, he was the defensive line coach and Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo. Hutchinson, might be the first pick in the draft, and Ajabo might be in the top 10. That's a nice, that's a nice bullet point to have on your resume. It certainly sounds good, if you're coming in and then, whoever got credit. I know McDonald was the overall defensive coordinator, but it's interesting just where the responsibilities are.
Hopefully, someone will listen to us and ask that question. But I like the decision. I'm fired up.
Well, good stuff. Sometimes we're burying the lead when it comes down to Jim Harbaugh. As you take Michigan fans or college football fans as a whole, they're tuning in. It's like, why are you guys talking about Harbaugh? I mean, everybody's going crazy. Well, I mean, this is day 17, 18, 19 here of this as it goes on. You stated your opinion that you think this is just a matter of time before he's, comes back home or makes it official. I mean, he's here. He doesn't really have to say is, waiting for the announcement on the new contract or whatever, or, he's just, like in Coming to America, they always said, Eddie Murphy was just going over to New York to soar his royal oats. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Harbaugh might be just, just kicking the tires, just having a little entertainment. Let's see what's going on here. Let's just listen to see what people have to say. I mean, anybody's, theory is as good as the next person's, almost here. But, one thing when it comes down to the Raiders and Mark Davis, they had John Gruden that they gave $100 million to, and he had Mike Mayock as his general manager. But, the thought there was that Gruden was also going to have some say on personnel. And I don't know if it's 100% true, but there was the line of thinking that when it came down to the first pick or second pick, that Gruden was heavily involved. And then later on, it was Mayock making the selection. So that's almost total control and free agency and all that other stuff. Certainly he had a voice and a very strong voice there. And that's where Harbaugh comes into the picture because, it worked out so badly. And they get the lawsuits and everything else with the emails with John Gruden that they want to come back and say, hey, Jim, we're giving you, because if Harbaugh is going to go somewhere, it's going to be with a lot of control and a lot of say when it comes down to personnel. And you know what? He's going to need a Gruden-type contract. Are the Raiders really going to go in there and say, hey, you know what? We just got out of a mess here. We're going to go on the same line here. We're going to go with a guy that we're going to give him the fans are going to love it, just like they love Gruden. We're going to give him $100 million, and we're going to give him pretty much total control over this. Are they going to follow up? Because usually – coaches and franchises, they don't do that. You got a short taskmaster. The next thing you know, you usually get a tall, skinny country club type guy. So, just from that standpoint, you could say that, you could question whether or not the Raiders would be, going after Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, there's a relationship there. Jim coached there way back 20-some years ago. And I think they know he's a high character guy. Jim has no dirt on his. He's got nothing, no skeletons. They haven't come out this far, so I don't think you're going to read about any skeletons.
Well, I don't know what it's skeletons, maybe about some emails or anything else. But one thing that could be a sticking point is that Jim Harbaugh went to 3 NFC Championship games. When the Packers were losing to the 49ers. I keep seeing these the replays of the Niners beating the beating the Packers and doing it at Lambeau. You know, they keep showing Colin Kaepernick running into the end zone. I know who the coach of the 49er teams were there. He went to a Super Bowl and went to 3 straight NFC championship games. He should have gone to another Super Bowl if his punt returner or kick returner Robinson, you know, didn't drop that one punt. You know, you could easily make the one play, one kick, that one fumble, one turnover there, that he'd be going to another Super Bowl. But you know, so he has that. But the part about the skeletons in the closet, you know, it's all out there in the open air. Like, he has to have a lot of control. He didn't get along with the general manager or owner, and, you know, the players called him a taskmaster and all these other things. So, you know, there's a part about it. If you're going to the NFL, it's like, hey, you know, you're not bringing in, you know, nobody's going to be sitting around holding hands and, you know, patting everybody on the back. Harbaugh's coming in and he's doing it his way. And, you know, you can like it, you can make the deal, and, you know, you see how it could pay off. Look at his record. Look what he was able to do in the postseason. But, you know, this is not like, hey, everybody just, you know, thinks Jim Harbaugh, this is pro-wise, you know, thinks he's the greatest guy or the greatest coach, and everybody wants to work for him.
Yeah, I think, you know, Jim obviously he had Balky, who's down with the Jaguars, and I think Jim knows he would have a pretty good idea of what he would want in terms of the guy he would work with.
That's right.
You know, and he has that you know, that personality he's thinking about if he was to make this decision. And we really don't know what these other guys are saying to him, what kind of power he would have, what kind of decision making he would have. But
no, I think we do know, Scar. I think he's going to have a lot, or he's not going to go anywhere, because he can make his choice. I mean, he's not desperate. He's in a position of power, which is great. And I think the one thing here is, like, it's not really a criticism of Harbaugh. You know, if he goes in, you know, he's gonna ask for what he wants, and if he goes someplace, he's gonna get it. And, you know, sure, you're a conduit through the fans and everything else. You're like, you're the you're the CEO of the team and everything. And look, you know, Bill Belichick's a jerk, and, you know, he treats people, you know, he's not the nicest guy up there and everything else, unless you're talking about something else non-team related. But if you win, you know, people respect you, and you end up looking at, like, you know, one of the greats of all time. So, you know, you win in the NFL, that takes care of anything. So, you know, coming in and, you know, you don't have to be the most people person out there, you know, when it comes to everything I just said about Harbaugh. You go
like Al Davis used to say, man. I actually met Al Davis, shook his hand. Just win, baby. So, you know, they don't care about whose feelings you hurt. If you're winning, you know.
Well, I think the other thing with the Raiders to keep in mind, and I don't know how much it's talked about, you know, people that are sitting here and are just talking about the coaching carousel nonstop, they've probably considered it, but we've known now with all of the job vacancy, there's been a few coaches. I think of Flores down in Miami. I think of Tully there at Houston. I mean, those were coaches, and they're black coaches, and they got fired. And really, there were, you know, questionable firings when you look at it. Now there's only one black coach, Mike Tomlin, in all the NFL. And the Raiders, when it came down, I mean, the Rooney rules for Rooney, who owns the Steelers. But if there was another franchise that's got a good record when it comes down to minority hirings, it would be Al Davis. And, you know, the word is that his son Mark is a chip off the old block, you know, from his old man there too. And you know what? These NFL teams should be considering minority candidates, not just like it always gets down to the Rooney rule, whether they're just doing it, you know, for appearance or anything else. But I think the Raiders and all these teams, they should and they will, you know, take a hard look, you know, when it comes down to, you know, minority hires. That would be another thing. If you're just playing it out percentage wise, when it comes down to, you know, looking at, you know, the Raiders and what they might do. Yeah, you know, he's got a relationship there, but these other things, there's some other factors as well. And plus, they just jumped at Gruden right off the bat. You know, this time they said that they're going to wait and they're going to, you know, play this one out, interview everyone. So if it is going to be the Raiders, you know, don't think of any quick resolution or anything. They have to do their diligence on all these coaches.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the first guys I would call anywhere is Jim Caldwell. I just respected the hell out of him. He won here in Detroit. I mean, we can beat that story up, you know, Detroit Lions, but I'd like Jim Caldwell. That's a guy I would call. And when I was with the Raiders, Denny, I met Art Shell. He was the offensive line coach, highly respected, you know, former player there. And then he went on to become, you know, the first black coach in the NFL. I remember that, and I had I had met him, so I saw him. I was happy to see that. Yeah, the Raiders have always been out front on any of that. And it gets back to Al. Just win, baby. And he don't care who the leader is. He don't care what color he is. Just win.
Right. Good point. So anything else? You said you think it might be done sooner than later here. I mean, that's your you're talking with your former teammates. That's what everybody's
saying. The guy I was talking to, because I said last week that I thought we'd be done by Sunday, which is a couple days past. So we're still dragging this thing on, but I just think it's all coming together. They got to get some things, a couple T's and I's and dotted and, all that kind of stuff. But I think we're coming close, and but it's going to be over and done, and we need to put it to bed because it doesn't help recruiting. And speaking of recruiting, Denny, real quick, people aren't talking about Ohio State firing two really, really good coaches. They fired Kerry Combs, a guy who I've known a long time, who is a great recruiter and a real good coach. That guy was all over the country, really, really good recruiter. And they fired Al Washington, who was at Michigan, who's also a really, really good recruiter. That's all good for Michigan, man. And people aren't talking about it. I see it, and I like it. Firing coaches up in Columbus is all good for the Wolverines.
Yeah, you like that chaos. You like that offseason chaos.
And I'm going to say another thing, and I remember hearing Urban Meyer talk about this. Urban Meyer was smart, man. Their scheme defensively at Ohio State, they ran a 4-3, okay? And Urban talked about changing it at times and this and that. And he said, you know what? When I go to recruit a kid like Chase Young, and he says, I want to play in the NFL and I want to rush off the edge, I want to be the next, great pass rusher. And those are the guys that get all the money in the NFL. Urban Meyer said, I'm going to run a 4-3 so I can recruit that kid and tell him he's going to make a lot of money. We're going to teach him how to play that position at Ohio State so he can make a lot of money, and all those things help in recruiting. But what's going on in Columbus now is they're going to run a three-man front, and people aren't talking about that. I see it. Urban Meyer talked about it. They're going to run a totally different scheme. Okay, and it's a different deal. There's no edge, wide nine. People talk about, if you know what the heck that is. I like seeing that because now all those little things affect recruiting, and that's all good stuff. And I like seeing Michigan State continue to bring in all these transfers too. I like it. I just saw where a highly recruited linebacker's leaving. He's leaving. He was recruited by the Spartans, and now you're bringing in transfers, so he's leaving. That kind of stuff has to continue up there so it starts to affect recruiting. I've mentioned it many times, but hey, man, I'm all about Michigan, so I want whatever's best for Michigan. I make no apologies there.
Well, you shouldn't, but what's happening down in Columbus and East Lansing, they're laughing when you say that. He's like, your coach is ready to, hook up with the Raiders. You guys are going, everything's, you talk about chaos. You better keep your own house and not worry about your other ones. Jim Schwartz brought in that wide nine with the Lions. Didn't really work, but I get it. It can, if you, in principle, when you start looking at it, and if you get a great rush edge or whatever else, when it comes down to Jim Harbaugh with me, if, this was the first go around here, I would look at recruiting and I would say, hey, you know what? I'll put February 2nd as the drop dead date. He's got to have something resolved since then, or, this is really going to cost, or really could cost Michigan when it comes down to recruiting. But you only have to go back to last year when it was the same thing. He was out there, whether or not you think that he was throwing in his hat or trying to get an NFL job. I mean, that's up to anybody that's watching or listening right now. I happen to think that he was kicking the tires and hoping that he was going to be able to get a job. And, they didn't give him the time of day last year. And that's why I think now that, he's, the cat's meow, and it's in any job. Wouldn't it be great? Like, your fallback is like, I've got everything that I ever wanted here. I got my family. I got all the power. I got all the money. I can name my price. Everybody loves me. I can do everything, just go back to Michigan, which, and I can do that at any second. Or you know what? Now I can go out there and let's just see what everybody has to say, now that there's all these coaching hires and I've been to a Super Bowl and NFC championship games, and I'm looking at some of these other guys' resumes. Let's go. Let's see what they have to say. That's what I think what's going on. Now, where, they want to get serious and interview and to make an offer, that's when it gets into the danger zone. So we'll find out if that's going to happen here, how close he gets to that. But, I think he's because he can. And it didn't hurt last year. And, what's it really going to hurt this year? So that's what I think.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, Denny. Time will tell, but I'm thinking pretty soon we're going to get some good news.
Well, I think everybody hopes you're right about that. Certainly the Michigan fans, not these Spartan fans that are listening to you, Scar. They're like, hey, Scar's dogging our 4-star linebacker that took off, and our.
But think about it, Denny. You don't think those transfers that came in? He brought in a kid from Nevada. I guarantee you that affected his decision. This kid was recruited to play linebacker. He probably got kicked around as a freshman like we all do. And he's thinking, you know what? I might be the guy now. I'm going to be able to compete this spring. And here's this coach that recruited me, and he brought in these transfers. I'm a little pissed off too, man. Maybe that's why he packed his bags.
Well, Scar, I think everything matters. And, last year when I looked at Tucker when he was in there, he only knew his recruits through Zoom. He never met any of them. I think he went to practice and, they had tape on their helmets. He was looking like, who's this guy? He hit the transfer portal, for, half the team. But meanwhile, he was able to put together a pretty formidable squad. So that's a guy to me that knows how to put together a football team. I'm not one to go patting Michigan State on the back or anything, but if you're looking for everything matters when it comes down to coaching and recruiting and everything else. But, I'm also going to look at, what has happened here recently and, what kind of product that they've put out there. And, Tucker's shown that he can throw together Scotch tape up a pretty good team with what is at his disposal right now. And what is at his disposal is that transfer portal. And, you can make a case that he's got the Midas touch when it comes down to that. I don't know how sustainable that is, hitting the portal left and right and throwing guys out there, but it sure as hell worked last year for him. So, yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't want if I was a Michigan State fan to see, 4-star linebackers hitting the road, but it was kind of like that in recruiting. They didn't have the greatest. I mean, they did pretty well in recruiting, but they also went out there in the transfer portal and got guys that used to be 4-stars and were able to bring them in. So,
No, hey, listen, Danny, I give him credit. He put it together. He put his pack. He brought in the good running back, and listen. I give him credit for that. I just think there's a downside, and I'm not going to underestimate those good defensive linemen they had. There were guys that were 4 or 5 year guys in that defensive line that have been around. Those were good players. Offensive line, those guys have been around, and the quarterback was a guy D'Antonio recruited. A lot of those guys he inherited. A lot of really good players. Reed, and. But at the same time, that's, hey, look, the guy can coach. We got to deal with him. And I'm just looking at it from another side that, is they just lost a good linebacker. So they got to figure out, is that what they want to do?
Take a long view of it. You think they're going to be down next year? I mean, they had a fantastic year. I mean, you think Michigan State is a serious contender in the Big Ten East, or do you think that, hey, Michigan State, that was a 1-year wonder type thing, and you're expecting them to have 4 or 5 losses? What do you think?
No, I think you have to deal with them, man. The quarterback's back. I got to look, like I said, there were really good defensive linemen that had been around there and some offensive linemen. He brought a kid in. They put a good offensive line together. The Reed's coming back. They're going to be a problem, man. You got to deal with them. Harbaugh hasn't beat them yet. So it is what it is. But
he's beat him a couple times, but he has a losing record against him. So
yeah, he hasn't beat Tucker though.
Tucker. Good point. Yeah, you're right.
He has not beat Tucker,
no.
And but yeah, they're going to be a good football team. They got the quarterback back, but I got to see how they fill in. But they lost their D-line coach too, and that's another thing, Danny. I look at all that stuff. That guy was a good coach. I thought he was good. They brought him. D'Antonio got him, I think, from Air Force back in the day. And he was with D'Antonio. He was a damn good defensive line coach. And even looking at what they did this past year, I just think he was a good coach. He was a good recruiter. And they're making a change there. So what does that mean? I don't know. But I thought he was a good coach. So anytime a good coach leaves, you know my thoughts. If they're for the enemy, that's good. That's good for Michigan.
I hear you. And you mentioned recruiting there. Let's get to the Michigan recruiting spotlight. And for that, yesterday it was the 2 weeks until February the 2nd. So we're under 2 weeks now to National Signing Day. And I asked Brandon Justice of the Maize and Blue Review just where things stand right now.
You're looking at Josh Connerly. You're looking at Andrew Paul. Michigan's trying to close on those two guys. The situation with Cavante Henry is one to keep tabs on, but as we've said, that one does not look good for Michigan. And so you're looking at Connerly and you're looking at Paul. And
there it is. Those three guys to keep in mind bowling up, then there's always a chance for a surprise. But Connerly's an offensive tackle out of Seattle. All the other teams that he is considering, from Miami to Oregon to Washington to USC, they all have one thing in common. All of their coaches are new, so and if Harbaugh makes an announcement, you think, hey, the stability, I have, I put myself like a 50% chance at landing the tackle if he makes an announcement on February 2nd. There was some thought that maybe he would blow past February 2 because of the uncertainty and everything else, with the staffs there. The other guy, the kid Paul, is not keeping his cards close to his vest, but, Michigan was in on him pretty early. First big school along with Colorado. I give them like a 70% chance at Paul. And Henry, who's committed right now, but is going everywhere that he can, to
Henry. What position is Henry?
Defensive end, California.
Okay.
Yeah, so Tua and Courtney Morgan were, his connections there, and obviously both of those guys are gone, and he's looking elsewhere. So I would put that as like a 20% chance. So 70% for the running back, 50% for Connerly Jr. For me, these are the numbers that I'm putting out, and just how I feel about it. And then Henry, I'll still put Michigan in there with a chance, but a pretty low chance, 20%.
Yeah, Connerly is the good tackle. He's got people, he's looking at schools all over the country. He's not afraid to go to Miami. So, or Michigan, those are a long way from home.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know who's recruiting them, which guy on our staff, but Sharon Moore definitely has a reputation now. They just won that award. That's got to help recruiting big time. So I don't know what the kid's thinking, man. Does he want to leave home? A lot of guys want to leave home. A lot of guys, every kid is different. I experienced this with some of my players I coached, and people say, well, why don't he want? Some kids want to get away from home. They want to get away. They got stuff they don't want to deal with. Other guys want to be near home. It depends on the kid, and it's got nothing to do with the coach or the college. Sometimes they're going away. And the running back is a 3-star kid from Texas, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, he's got to like what Michigan does with our running backs, and Michael Hart is, I think, the guy recruiting them there. And you can't ask for a better guy to recruit a running back at Michigan. There's no coach in the country than better coach than Michael Hart to recruit a running back to come to Michigan. Michael Hart's lived it. He knows what it is to play here. He's a good coach. He knows how to talk to those kids. So I think we got the right guy on that deal. And you never know. Maybe Mike Elston can pull some magic and get a relationship. I don't know who's the lead recruiter on the kid from California, but Jim Harbaugh, he coached at Stanford. He coached the 49ers. He coached at San Diego. Those were his 3 first stops. Jim Harbaugh's name in California is still big. It's still big with with the parents and the grandpas and the uncles. They know who the hell Jim Harbaugh is, even though the guys that are coming out of high school, they don't remember him so much when he was at Stanford and some of these places. But his name is big in California still.
Yeah, and for me, I look at Paul. I know he's ranked by Rivals as a 3-star, but I saw a quote from his coach saying, he's getting the Bo Jackson treatment right now. He had in October Texas State, Sam Houston, and Houston Baptist. Those were his offers. And then one of the coaches from one of those schools took the coach outside and said, hey, what do I need to know about this kid? I mean, I'm looking at his tape. He's awesome. The coach is like, you don't know anything. People aren't really looking at his tape. He's just not getting the word out. And then Colorado, then Michigan, and now Clemson, and now Notre Dame. They're all So I think that, he might be ranked as a 3-star, but if I was a Michigan football fan, I would be looking at him as a 4-star. I mean, if that makes any sense to the folks out there. So
yeah, isn't it crazy how that recruiting works sometimes? It's like, yeah, you just wait and wait and wait. Like I got a buddy whose kid's out getting recruited. He's in New Jersey, and he's got some smaller offers. And the guy, his high school coach told him the same thing. He said, once that big offer comes, then they're all going to come in. And that's just how it is. Everybody's waiting to see what do they know that I don't? What are they seeing? What's the inside information that maybe I didn't see? And that's kind of what they're that's how that plays out sometimes. And but we'll see what happens with him, man. We've got good running backs, and looks like a kid that could play defense or running back.
Yeah, I've always wondered, it's all fun, for fans and all of us, and especially if we haven't watched any of the guys play, yeah, you can watch some video, and that stuff's, available. Heck, you can watch the kids, games on YouTube, so you can know a lot more than you could even 5 years ago. But I always wondered what the coaches' overall boards look like. I mean, are they sitting around thinking, you know what, yeah, nobody really likes this guy, but man, we think this guy's the best. And then vice versa, the guys that they might say, this guy's the best kid in the state. And I'm like, I don't want that kid. I don't even think he's that talented. I always wondered, what.
Hey, Denny, it's coaches battle it out, man. It's the same thing in college as it was in when I would get my coaching staff together, my high school, my JV coaches, my freshman coaches, my varsity, and we would look at kids, and we would all have different opinions, man. They say, this kid's this kid should play here. And this, as the head coach, I got to make the final decision, but people will look at a kid and evaluate them differently. I seen it in, I remember a kid that was getting offers from Big Ten schools that we were coaching, and in Central Michigan didn't think he was good enough to play at Central Michigan. I remember talking to that coach. So everybody has different opinions about what they see, how that kid's going to develop, and if there was, and it's a hard thing to predict sometimes, but they're all different, and there's no shame in that. Because there's no exact science.
All right, let's take the turn here and get to Big Ten basketball. And if you're a fan of Big Ten hoops, then tonight you've got number 4 Purdue taking the trip to Bloomington to take on Indiana, a team that Michigan will play 3:30 on Sunday. So Purdue at Indiana tonight. That's 7:00 on FS1. Not a bad game to take in if you're a college basketball fan.
Oh yeah, that's a big rivalry there. That's their Michigan State. Those teams hate each other. True. It really matters there. And what I'm seeing, Denny, is I think any and everybody is beatable in the Big Ten. Yeah, Purdue is good. Yeah, Illinois is good. But Michigan State is good. But they just lost at home. So. If you play your game, getting back to our Wolverines, we're capable of beating anybody if we play like we're playing better defense. If we can make shots like we did at Nebraska, like we did this past weekend. Diabate's getting so much better, so much improvement daily, weekly from that kid. We can compete with anybody. I watched all these guys play at Ohio State. We can beat Michigan State. So hey, they're all beatable. Let's just keep getting better.
Yeah, well, considering you start looking at the standings, and I agree with you with all of that and what you're taking a look at. But the one that jumps out is the loss to Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota, they haven't done anything. Since they played really well against Michigan, they look great. 1-2 combo. Oh man, they're awesome. Look at these guys. They didn't do anything before, and they haven't done anything after. So that loss sticks out like a sore thumb. For Michigan. But yeah, I mean, you go out there and change things around in the view by winning on the road. It's hard for any Michigan team historically to go in there, the Bloomington, whoever was on the rosters and win there. I mean, that's a tough place to play. So Sunday will be interesting. Be interesting for you, Scar, because you've got Tom Brady and the Bucs hosting Matt Stafford and the Rams. That game will kick off a little bit after 3:00. Michigan and Indiana, a 3:30 jump in Bloomington. So do you have, I picture you with a couple screens here and, one remote, and you're able to take it all in, or, I mean, What kind of
Denny,
area do you have?
Denny, I've got the 75-inch, so I've got I got the big screen, but I've got the DVR. I am a DVR professional. So I will watch, I just keep going back and forth. I won't miss a snap, and I'll watch the whole game. I'll watch them both in its entirety. Timeouts, commercials, you go to the other game, you back and forth, and I'll be able to see it all. But yeah, I am always rooting for Tom Brady, and yeah, Michigan. Yeah, it'll be a tough game down there, but we can compete with them. We got, that crowd is alive. They're close. They're right there, and it's a loud place. And the fans, they have great support there in Bloomington. The fans will be a big factor in that game. But I will definitely watch both. I won't miss anything.
Man, I can't get over it. I have a 55-inch screen. I don't get to see it much because it's way up. I watch, I think, a 50. But I also, I was going into my my computer, and it looked pretty good. I had it all set up. And then for the longest time, I just had this little iPad over there. And then I'm like, I wonder if I could get it. And you know what? I could get TV right there on my little iPad, and it goes everywhere. So I've seen setups that have screen and everything. Look really nice. I wouldn't mind having one of those. And 70, anything above 70, man, it's a whole different experience. I mean, you sit back, it's like being in a movie theater. So I'm envious of that, but I'll have basketball and football going.
Yeah, Benny, I have a certain cable company for one reason, the DVR. I like their DVR above anybody else's. And because when I'm watching a game, I'm rewinding, I'm pausing, I'm slow-mo. Because sometimes to really analyze, especially a football play, you got to look at it 2-3 times to say, why did that play work? Why did it not work? What did this, it's sometimes you just can't see it when it's run live. And if you don't have the chance to rewind it to really understand it. So yeah, it's for me, it's a must for me, man. I got to have that DVR.
My favorite thing is the what's it, about a 5-6 second rewind? You just hit that thing.
Yeah.
You have that there. Let me see that play again. Boom. And then you sound like John Madden. Boom. Then you're building it up, and then you're like, all right, let me go back and watch that play again. Let me watch that one. It gets to the commercials. You hit live. Boom. You've erased the whole commercial set. You're ready to go. Yeah. That's the way I like doing it. But every time I say that, I won't have the game DVR because I'm like, hey, I'm watching it live, or I hit pause. Next thing you know, I'm hitting fast forward, and I missed a quarter there. So you always have to record and make sure you have your own back, or you can end up outsmarting yourself when it comes down to some of that DVR stuff. If you haven't recorded it, you're just trying to be cute like me. I've screwed up many times. Well, tomorrow, so we got Indiana hosting Purdue tonight. Tomorrow night, 9:00 start, same FS1. You've got Michigan State. They're taking the trip to the most surprising team in a positive way in the Big Ten, Wisconsin. So we'll be able to see MSU whiskey tomorrow night. That's a must watch for your college.
People, you say that. It's interesting you say that, because I would say the same thing. Is like, we're shocked about Wisconsin. Well, guess what? If Wisconsin didn't have the average year last year, Wisconsin has always been one of the toughest teams to beat for the last 15 years in the Big Ten. Denny? But we're basing it on what they did last year, which was a down year for them. But yeah, they got good players, man. They always recruit, they just play a methodical game, smart game. Seems like that Brad Davis has been there for about 10 years. They got a lot of guys that have been around.
I think he has been there for 6 years, which, is crazy, right? So, the thing is, like Illinois, people are a little bit down on Illinois. They lost, DeSumo. They lost one of their other scorers, and they brought that transfer into Utah. I mean, that guy's as good as anybody in the Big Ten. And Wisconsin, they weren't looked to be, I know they do play a similar brand and everything, but nobody was talking about Johnny Davis. Johnny Davis is the best player in the Big Ten. I mean, he can't be stopped. And nobody was saying, going into the season, people weren't sitting around saying, oh, boy, watch out for Johnny Davis. And that's all anybody says now.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a heck of an athlete. Well, we saw him. I saw him last year. He played last year, right?
Yeah.
He was a freshman. And, he's really improved, but they built a team around him. They've got shooters. They got guys that can really stretch the floor. They've always had a big kid on the low block. He likes to play.
Big white kid, probably, yeah.
Yeah, they'll have a kid that can step out and shoot the three at the low post guys. But the guy's a good coach, and he's got that kid surrounded with some good players. They got a good system. They don't turn the ball over. Wisconsin's tough, but like I say, anybody can beat anybody, and there's no real great team in the Big Ten. Purdue's pretty darn good, but Michigan State got beat at home by Northwestern. Who would have saw that one coming?
Yeah, I did not see that one coming, but I am, Michigan State. The refs in that game did everything at the end to give Michigan State that game. I made 2 horrendous calls late in that game. The game before, Michigan State had, Hauser, the transfer who wasn't that productive last year, has been doing all right this year. He ended up hitting the bucket at the end of the game. But I think it was Christie over the corner. Total travel. I mean, they're standing there right in front of Izzo. I'm sure the guy was, intimidated from Izzo, but, they call it travel there. Michigan State loses that game, and they've lost 2 in a row. But, they haven't, and they're up there, and they've turned things around. Michigan's got to win on Sunday. At least, put something back-to-back together. Because then you're starting to look, and you're like, okay, hey, then they got Northwestern. They can. I know Northwestern just won, but that should be a winnable game. And, then you're talking about stringing some victories together because some tough ones are coming up. Going to Michigan State, if they have to make those games up against Purdue and Michigan State, those aren't going to be easy. An opportunity, hopefully they are able to play them.
Yeah, hey, if they can beat Indiana on the road, that team's confidence will be out the roof, man. They can go anywhere and win. They will be a confident team, and they could win there. And Michigan State is a beatable team. I think Michigan could match up and beat them. But you're right, Denny. We'll see what happens. But that would be a huge win that could set them up to have a real good run the rest of the season.
We don't know what kind of line we're going to have in that game, but Indiana has to play tonight. Indiana goes out there and beats Purdue. They'll probably be like a 7-8 point favorite against Michigan. They get their teeth kicked in, maybe 4 or 5. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I would put Indiana. I don't know how what big a factor the outcome for tonight would be on that line. Yeah, I don't know how what big, but I would say I would put that line Saturday around or Sunday. I would put that line around 4.5, 5, right about where you are.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you go out there and beat Purdue, who's only lost 2 games all year long, and Trace Jackson Davis goes for 30 and 15, you'd be like, whoa. Let's see. So we'll. It sounds like you're predicting a victory for Michigan on Sunday.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm predicting a victory because I think that Jackson Davis. I mean, that kid is probably
He's nice.
He might be the best big man in the Big Ten. I mean, this kid can step away. He's athletic. He blocks shots. Hunter's good. He's not as athletic as this kid. This kid does a few more things. I think.
What about Kofi?
I think this kid can make free throws. I think this kid, I'd rather go against Kofi, I think, than this kid.
Wow. That's saying something. All right. While we're on the predictions here, Scar, at the end, I'm going to throw these wild card. Well, they're not wild card. They're divisional games. But it's a wild card for you because I said I didn't tell you what was going to happen. Let's hear some picks. Since he's at Tennessee, the number 1 seed in the AFC, the Titans are a 5.5 point favorite. How do you see that game?
Wow, that went to 5.5. It was just 3 a while ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's why I have these glasses up here. You are right. 3.
Yeah, I like Mike Vrabel. I think he's a hell of a coach. Tennessee on grass at home. They've been resting their guys up, healed up. I would take I'd give the 3. I would take Tennessee.
All right. I'm thinking about taking Cincinnati straight up in that one. The Packers, that game's down to 5.5. It was 6. San Francisco at Green Bay. How do you see that one?
I tell you, I really think that one of the best coaches in the NFL schematically, offensively, that just gives you problems because of the scheme and the stuff they do is the San Francisco coach. He's one of the last guys I would want to defend.
Mike Shanahan.
Schematically. Okay, but Green Bay's got the guy called Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know how good Green Bay's defense is. I'm leaning, if someone pushed to shove, I would take I would take the points, and I would take San Fran because I really like that coach. I like their quarterback. And I think Green Bay's defense is average. I think the points. That game could be a close game.
They're getting 2 Pro Bowlers back, Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith. So those are 2 impact players on defense. I agree with everything that you had to say, except that you like the San Francisco quarterback. I don't like Jimmy G. Jimmy G is lucky that he didn't throw that game away to Dallas. He's lucky Dallas is Dallas or Mike McCarthy is Mike McCarthy, because if not, they might have cut Jimmy G right now. But let's take it to Sunday. That's the Rams and Bucks. Tom Brady against Matt Stafford here. And if Matt Stafford can get this win, that'll really be a monkey off his back here. Tom Brady's done it a million times. He's got 100 guys out here, but we've seen him do it, so many times that it would be tough to bet against Tom Brady. But that's the way I'm leaning right now. What about you?
Yeah, they beat him out there in L.A. It was a pretty good game earlier in the year. The Rams beat Tampa earlier in the year. I watched that game. Tampa Bay is interesting. Are you going to get the team that couldn't score a point against the New Orleans Saints? Or are we going to get the team that played last week and never got stopped? This game, I'm going to go with Stafford because I think, Tampa still has a couple players out. They don't have the one receiver. They got Evans. They got the tight ends. But, I saw that game the first time around. The Rams play real good defense. It's tough to go against Tom Brady, but I'm going to take the points. I think it's going to be a real close game. And I like Stafford. I'm cheering for Stafford too. I like both quarterbacks in this game, but I would take the points with the Rams.
I would too, but you know what? I've seen it the 12 years when he was in Detroit. Just when you think things are going good and they've got all the players around you, Stafford will throw a game away. And a lot of times in these big games, Tom Brady's not going to make the mistake to lose the game. But Matt Stafford, has the propensity to do that. So, that if it does end up going the Bucs' way, everybody said, well, we should have seen this one coming from miles away. But I'm with you. I feel like it is going to be the Rams because of the talent and the injuries on the other side. That gets us to the big game of the weekend, the most enticing one. The Bills, they're on the road at Arrowhead, the Sea of Red there, Kansas City. That is the Chiefs right now, 1.5. Which way are you leaning there?
Yeah, that line is pretty darn good, because these teams – both of their quarterbacks, I don't want to defend because they're both good passers, but the biggest pain in the butt is that they're both mobile and they do just enough to keep the play alive. They can avoid the rush. They got some predetermined runs with them occasionally. They're very similar quarterbacks. They can throw accurate passes and you got to deal with their ability to run. Both really good coaches. I think Buffalo might play a little better defense, but they're on the road. That's the one thing. I think they're both good on offense. I think Buffalo plays a little better defense. The fact that they're in Kansas City, that's why it's 1.5. You know what, man? I would just take the home team. I would take the home team in this deal here if someone pushed me on it. Playing on grass, but that would be my pick.
Well, I was pushing you on it, so that is the selection. Scar, I want to ask if there's anything that you wrote down there that you wanted to tell everybody that's watching out there right now.
Hey, it's as far as our Wolverine football team, it's really Ben Herbert time. This is Ben Herbert time. Everybody talks about the strength coach. This is where the guy earns his money. This is where the team is starting to get formed and formulated with that winter conditioning. I remember going through it, and I know they're working, they're running, and lifting and getting strong, and it's Ben Herbert time. But I got a memorable moment here at the end. If you finish
the memorabilia minute. Let's go, man. What do you got?
Well, Denny, it's actually it's not any object or anything. It's I want to talk about a guy that I played with because he just passed about a month ago.
All right.
Guy by the name of Milt Carthens, big tight end out of Birmingham, Bloomfield Hill area. He was a year ahead of me, but he was a good player. He was a tight end, caught a lot of passes, played a lot of football for the Wolverines, but he just passed. But I want to. He was loved. So many guys. Everybody has guys you love, and he was just loved by everybody. But going through, people have heard me talk. Football is tough. The demands of college football is tough. You go to practice every day, and it's a grind. You go to school in the morning, it's a grind. And you come down and you try to make it through. But big money milk cartons, he was a guy that always had a joke, a comment, something to get you through the day. But I saw a lot of my buddies last week at the wake that they had for Big Milt. We all just it was great to see a lot of my old teammates, and he was loved. And I just want to say a shout out to a good Wolverine. He's up there in heaven. Number 83, baby, Milk Carthens.
Well done, Scar. Thanks for your time, and we will talk with you soon. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, Denny, talk.
See ya.